Instead of updating arrays or objects by replacing them with new arrays or objects, you also have an alternative approach you could use in Angular. Let's say you still want to internally change an array or object. You don't want to replace it. In that case, to tell Angular to re-execute this transform method whenever it could potentially need to execute it again, you can add the pure configuration property to this pipe configuration object and set it to false. The default is true, but if you set it to false, you effectively disable this caching mechanism I described before. And now Angular will execute transform every time anything changed anywhere in that template. And therefore, you should only do that with care, because this method here will now be executed a lot and it can have a significant impact on your application's performance. Still, in situations where you know that it should execute as often as possible, you can achieve this by setting pure to false. And by doing that, if you reload, you can again click these items and they will be replaced with 18s. Again, we now have this index mismatch here, but that's not too important for this demo app. Instead, what's important to understand here is that you can create these impure pipes in case transform should execute every time anything changed in the template. Now, to avoid mismatches, as we have them here, where when we click on an item, we added an element in the original array, which is at a different index than in the array that's visible on the screen. To avoid situations like this, you could consider not using pipes for cases like this, where you change the order of elements in an array, for example. Though sometimes it might be the perfect tool because you don't have any scenario like this where the order could matter. So in such situations, a pipe might be perfect. But if you have situations like we have it here, where the position of an element does matter, a pipe might not be that great of a solution, and using the index for identifying an item might not be that great of a solution, especially both in conjunction are a problem. So instead here, you might want to pass a more unique identifier of a value to onReset and use that there if available. Though here in case of some plain numbers, that's a bit hard because there is nothing unique about each item. But alternatively, instead of using a pipe, you might want to consider changing the data that is displayed on the screen so that you don't have a mismatch between visible data and internally managed data. So here you could, for example, add a constructor function and change this historic temperatures to call sort right on it, and then perform the kind of sorting you want to have in your app. So you could then grab that code for sorting in ascending order if you want ascending sorting, put that here, and therefore change the raw input data. Now with that, you can then get rid of that pipe, and you should get rid of it. And with that done, if you now change a value, it's really that value that will change. So that's then the better approach if you plan on manipulating those items that are being output. You want to avoid mismatches between the data you work on and the data that's visible on the screen. Unless you have some unique identifier that could be used. But if that's not the case, as it's here, you should strongly consider operating on the raw input data. And that's also something worth keeping in mind when using pipes, that they are mainly meant to be used to transform what the user sees. Whenever you enter the area of changing behaviors and adding functionality, you want to think twice before using a pipe.